Welcome to another YEV, the Balance podcast for all things EV, and that includes myself, Tim Aylan, and Petrolhead to now Chargehead, Alex Grant, who is our in-house motoring and technology journalist, and of course Kevin Booker, our six-time EV range champion. Something like that, isn't it, Kev?
Yeah, got a couple of Guinness World Records somewhere.
Yeah, just a couple.
Actually got round to putting the one back up. Putting the last one up. It's only been in the box since I've had it for 6 months. That's obviously how impressed I am with them now.
Oh, well, it's clearly time to do another one. So you'll have to bear with me today because I was at a stag do last night. So it's probably slightly slower than normal. So going backwards. But today we're going to be talking about the recent exciting news, really, in the EV industry, the 1 billion EV and depot funding. So that's for EV depot funding and grants for van and truck. And I mean, it's huge news for the EV industry and really quite timely, really, with all the energy prices increases what's happening at the moment with obviously what's going on in the Middle East with oil prices increasing. I think I saw one diesel pump at £1.90 odd this week, and I've seen some online for like £2. It's getting horrendous. So if we can speed up the transition, that's not being reliant on fossil fuels and what's going on in other parts of the world, I'm all for it, really. And of course, less dirty air in cities, etc. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a bit more detail about the actual grant. We're going to talk about our experiences. From myself, it's going to be from a charging and EV transition using data, and a little bit about energy with my new role at Optimo Energy. Alex can bridge the gap a bit in terms of his experience in vehicles and his you've played around with many vans, haven't you, Alex, over the time? Plus we've got Kevin, who has his own EV charging infrastructure to look after, don't you, chap?
Yeah, and got quite a few vans I've deployed over the years.
Yeah, and you've got a van arriving with you very soon, haven't you? At Verizon, is it?
Yeah, next on Monday I get the Verizon L3H3. Decided not to do things by halves and go for the longest, highest Verizon van, which will be interesting if I try. Daily in that, but I might give it a go.
Be interesting to see how much it affects your solar yield this week, because it's going to blot out the sun because it's so enormous.
Yeah, I wonder where I'm going to fit it. I might have to move the Tesla to fit on the drive. To be fair, the Tesla hasn't moved for 4 weeks because
I was going to say doubling the mileage if you're moving off the drive, mate.
It's done 180 miles since I've had it.
Wow. Unbelievable. Well, funnily enough, I was in a 25 plate one yesterday and it had done 47,000 miles. Fairly impressive. A few miles. What I thought I would start with is, just basically detailing what this grant funding and the EV depot funding is all about, just to kind of break it down. So it comes in two parts, really. So there's the depot charging scheme, which is 170 million for the depot charging, which funds installations of charging infrastructure at the fleet depots, and there's 28 million that's allocated for 2026, 2027. Projects will have until the 31st of March 2027 to complete works, and the application window will close on the 30th of June 2026. And then apparently there's another window that opens 28th of October 2026 to the 29th of January 2027. And then the grants, which is for the trucks and the vans, and that is going to be different grant amounts depending on the weight. So 15k for 4.25 to 12 ton, 37 up to 37k for 12 to 18 ton, and 52,000 for 18 to 26 ton, and 81,000 for the 26 ton plus HGVs. And it's capped at 100 vehicles across all categories. And now this was quite a big thing actually for the HGV operators. I'm not sure if it affected the van one so much, but there was a £5 million cap that some of the EHGV operators had, which basically meant that if their customers had already taken advantage of grant funding up to 5 million, then that grant funding wasn't available for those particular brands. So other brands managed to take advantage of that at the time. which is a bit disappointing because if you're used to a specific OEM HGV, you want to kind of stay with that particular truck because you might have a service center nearby, you might have really good relationships, but at the end of the day, money talks, doesn't it? So if you can get an eHGV from 250 odd thousand pounds or more than that, down to the price of very close to a diesel, then obviously you're just going to buy what you can. Before we start going into sort of, talking about how to optimize and, maximize this grant funding and what route to take and maybe who to actually approach, do you think that the government and the bodies have put the money in the right areas? Do you think that it's the right thing to put it towards the depot infrastructure and the vehicles themselves?
I think, yes, you're solving two main issues there, both price related. Cars are a pretty easy thing to deploy these days if you're operating a fleet. It's the vans and HGVs are a slightly a tighter business case, aren't they? I mean, there's it's quite a different operating. The range is that much lower. The payloads can often be quite a lot lower, and if you're then depending on public charging more, which tends to be the result of that, you then end up with kind of inflated operating costs because you're relying on public networks. So being able to kind of have that turnaround at the depot and then kind of bring down the cost of the vans as well is a massive, it's a massive step in the right direction, I think. But it's such a complicated area though, isn't it? Because it is a huge operational change deploying vans. Yeah,
it's massive. Kevin, what about yourself? But bear in mind, you've got some really good experience with electrifying a fleet yourself.
It's good that these grants are here. I'm not sure if they're necessarily open to kind of public sector because they tend to have to get different funding for it. This is more sort of business. I mean, it's good to see that they haven't dropped the 5,000 van grant on the stuff below 4.25, which I was worried that they might think that's kind of done and thought that's a bit like cars to deploy. Because there is still a price differential on those smaller vans, which still need support. So it's good to see that. I mean, it's whether people will actually deploy them, because you find with the bigger fleets and the bigger trucks, they tend to run them till they break rather than have a cycle and stuff. You might find your big kind of haulage company, your big known brands will have a cycle on them, but you'll find your smaller ones who are going to need this sort of help to electrify, run them till they break, because they're generally getting the ones that come off the bigger fleets and just running them till they die.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to a few people about this funding, and I think there was some people that were saying that actually rather than putting the funding towards the vehicles in the infrastructure, actually just focusing it on the actual energy cost. Because the energy cost is like fuel cost would be for a TCO, for a total cost of ownership. The energy cost is what actually helps make the affordability. But I think quite a lot of the time, everyone knows that an electric HGV or van's a little bit shaky here, but certainly an eHGV is a hell of a lot more expensive than a diesel version. And the EV depot grant is certainly going to help because, you don't have to have your own infrastructure for a diesel van, do you? You just go to a petrol station, unless it is a massive operation with bunker fuel, etc. But I think the main kicker from a cost point of view tends to be that energy, that potential increase of grid capacity that you might have to gain, and there's obviously a big time element to that as well. So yeah, and I don't think it really detailed. I went through it. It didn't actually say whether, let's say, for example, you couldn't get the grid connection and it was a long time to try and get the number of kilowatts or megawatts even that you need, because the line needs to go under a bridge, over a bridge, road, what have you, or it's a bad area, because it is pretty much a postcode lottery from a power point of view. The fact that you can take advantage of solar and battery storage, but it didn't really say in the depot grant infrastructure if that was actually included. So if anyone has seen that grant funding, I'd be really interested to see if you're going to be taking advantage of that. But certainly from an EV infrastructure point of view, I think it's great. But where do people start?
Well, it's interesting. I did a piece about postal fleets, and one of the things that came out that's quite interesting about that is you're saying that if you're deploying electric vans and electric HGVs, you do them at opposite ends of the fleet. So with electric vans, you tend to do the kind of last mile, short route stuff, whereas with the HGVs, you do the opposite stuff. So you need to make an HGV work, you need to deploy it on the highest mileage routes and kind of predictable stuff. So you kind of depot to depot, plug it in at each end, or kind of a return journey where it can do it on one charge if you can. It's you're electrifying the highest mileage vehicles on the fleet with HGVs, and you're doing not necessarily the other way around, but you're doing it. Yeah, you're doing the kind of the last mile stuff with the vans. So it's an interesting one in terms of looking how the business case kind of compares with those two and where they work best.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because I think quite often people would go for the low-hanging fruit. Oh, that one only does 20 miles a day. But actually, when you've got an EHGV that costs circa £250,000 without a grant, that actually you need to, as they call it in the industry, sweat the asset. You need to absolutely max out that particular vehicle, even put it on a 2-shift pattern with a pair of drivers, just to really get the most out of that vehicle. But I think where it all starts is the planning side. This is what I was doing with Dynamon before, and there are other companies out there that do that as well, using the data, using whether it's telematics or your historic fleet movement data to understand, what the feasibility is, understanding how much power you need, how many charges, what power are charged, and the cost. So that planning aspect is absolutely key. Obviously, it depends on the operation, because some operations are very easy to understand because it might just be the same route all the time, very low mileage, and the actual complexity isn't actually too much. But if there is that operation where there is a lot more complexity, and no route is the same, and you're not sure if actually the vehicle will make it, you've got loads to take into account. I'm guessing Kevin, when he's driving the Horizon, he's not going to have heavy loads in the vehicle. Or have you got any plans to whack anything in the back?
I am trying to work out how I can test it with a ton, but I don't know if I've got a ton of stuff to put in there, because I want something that's easy to put in there. But I don't really want to go to builders merchants and buy a ton of sand just to test it, because I'll then have to get rid of the ton of sand. But
it's not wide enough to accommodate an 830 kilo car, eh?
I don't know. Could we get it in diagonally? If you get it on 2 wheels, would it go in that way?
Theoretically, yes. Might scratch the roof a little bit, though.
I was going to say, we can build you a ramp, see if you can get 2 wheels on it, like the old Montego commercial.
Yeah.
Was it Russ Swift or something that did that?
No, it would have been somebody like that, yeah. Or what's the other guy called?
Yeah,
Terry Grant or somebody like that.
Oh,
Probably
Terry,
Russ Swift.
Yeah. I saw him at a recent Silverstone car event, actually. He had a TVR and some other weird retro looking thing, doing some mad crazy stuff.
Well, can you fill it full of petrol as well? Because it might be a bit heavier, just so I can get up to the ton payload.
It's only a 43-litre tank. You ain't going to have that much to the weight. Okay.
So thanks everyone for popping in the comments. There's some interesting stuff coming in here. So we've got Keith has mentioned that his company was waiting for the grant, which that tends to be the case. I mean, you've got, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if you can take advantage of it now, it's a great time to do it. But maybe just focus on, like I mentioned before, doing the planning, understanding which of your vehicles can transition, and do it in phases rather than all at once, but understand exactly what the fully electrified fleet looks like. So whatever infrastructure, whatever the first phase, the second phase looks like, it does marry up to what the end goal looks like in principle, to make sure that you're not digging stuff up again.
I think it's possibly worth adding in that the obvious first step with that in mind is to measure what you're doing, is to know how your fleet moves, fit telematics or some form of telematics system into your vehicles, know where they stop, how far they travel, where they go, how long they stop for, and that kind of highlights where you need the infrastructure in the first place, and then enables you to optimize it, and also identify which vehicles can go electric easily. So I mean, that's your bedrock is data. You can't do this by guessing it, otherwise you can get it really badly wrong. And then go and talk to so Ofgem are looking at reforming grid connections. That's the other thing that's going on in the background, which is a non-financial thing. But they're looking at streamlining it. I can't remember what they said. It was some ridiculous increase in the length of time. I think I've got a feeling it's at least double the amount of time, average time for grid connections, compared to what it used to be. And yeah, the long waits for good grid connections are a big issue if you're trying to electrify a fleet, and it's very local. I mean, it can be opposite sides of the road on an industrial estate, can be on different connections, and you could have two adjacent buildings, one of whom gets it through straight away and has no issues, and the other side has huge issues depending on. So it's a real lottery, as you're saying about the postcode lottery side of things. So liaising with your what do they call them, DNO, your distribution network operator, and kind of trying to find out whether you need more power is another big step in the right direction for these things. Understand the timescale and understand how your fleet works. That's a really, really big step.
Yeah, and some of the telematics providers will actually do a free trial with you for like a month or 3. But the only problem is, obviously, there is a bit of a time limit here. So if you haven't got telematics already, then this could actually like push the decisions that you need to make in the timeframes that they're allowing. Plus the fact that this money could run out quite quickly. And this is where I think it's important to highlight that some of the bigger fleets that already have ESG targets, specific decarbonisation targets, they are already ready. And I think I did see someone, I think it was Johnny Berry, who works at Navuna. He's saying, it's not just about, this gun going off to start this fleet electrification grants, etc., and the depot funding, but also the fact that, which fleets are going to be ready. This isn't the end. You get the funding. It's like, okay, thank goodness we got the funding. That is the beginning. But like I said, a lot of these companies that have already got this decarbonisation, the ESG targets, they're already ready to crack on. Whereas a lot of these businesses might be like, oh, look at all this grant funding, and then they're diving into it. And I've seen examples of that where they might have just gone to a charging company and gone, oh, I'm getting this. I've got this number of vehicles. I would need some chargers. Put some chargers in, and that's where it really breaks down without actually looking at the data, understanding what good looks like, and optimizing your electrification transition for sure. Lewis has just put in here, China is now at 28% of new HGV are new energy, a term that includes BEV, BEV, and hydrogen. I can't find how much each makes up the 28%. That's big percentage, isn't it? A very big percentage.
Hoping in a few weeks' time to go there to see that, because I may be going to China, so I'm going to try and see if I can see all this tech that's there.
Commuter branch lines absolutely nailed it here. It's not just about the plan for the electrification, using the data. It's also actually just bringing everyone with you, making sure that the people are not only see the vision and see what the phases look like, what you're trying to achieve, but also, from a training point of view. I've seen, I'm not going to mention the name of the brand name of the company, but a guy just sat on a charger, a DC charger, charging at 95%. It's like, yeah, just going to get this next 5%, just sat there, just like literally doing nothing. So yeah, helping people understand that actually, something like the DC charging curve, only charge between 10 and 80%, and then go and do something else rather than sat in a charger for the last 20%, depending on the vehicle, of course, because different vehicles have different charge curves.
Yeah. Do we think, though, that I'm sure there was something last time that this funding like this didn't all get used? So because people couldn't get stuff in place within the deadlines. So do we think that possibly it's going? Yeah, because the last round, I'm sure it didn't get all used up because people couldn't get stuff delivered or installed those deadlines. So could this be money that's ending up going to be recycled for a project again because it doesn't get used in time?
Yeah, could well be. I mean, it's not just delay of charges and putting the stuff in the ground. Bearing in mind, there's going to be quite a lot of pressure on the EV industry, whether it's the charging infrastructure or the transition software companies using helping to produce these plans, consultants. So it's going to be it's going to be a very busy time for everyone. But there are going to be delays, not on just charging infrastructure, but also from a grid connection point of view. So I think we'll probably see that again. But I think it's a good thing for the EV industry because, everything was a little bit flat, although there was that a large amount of funding for vehicles and infrastructure in the last quarter, to be fair. But
what I do fear with these grant things is that there'll be companies that pop up to kind of fulfill this demand that don't last very long. We've seen it with solar companies, because I can say that, every company that I've had to do solar here is like, they don't exist now. It's like, it's those companies, and the companies that have installed chargers and stuff, they don't seem to hang around very long. I'm worried that sometimes these grants push loads of companies to spring up to try and capitalize on these grants. They've not necessarily got the skills to do that. And then when you need them to support it, they're then gone.
That's a really good point, actually. There are some established players in the game, and it's probably worth looking at track record, portfolios, see what sort of backing they've got, and whether they are somebody with the stability, because this is long-term investments. These are still sizable chunks of money to be putting down. You want to make sure that whoever you have putting this stuff in place is going to be around to fix your problems and support you as you go along, and that you're not going to end up with a load of equipment that you have to rip out and replace at some point.
Yeah, because you look at some of the Royal Mail stuff, the fact that that's not supported anymore, and they spent a lot of money putting infrastructure in for it now not to be supported.
Well, it's not just Royal Mail; it's also DPD with a particular charger. Well, not charger company, energy company, which I think you've suffered from as well, Kevin. Mentioning no names, but yeah, so. It's a difficult one, that though, isn't it? It is a really difficult one. How as a business do you think about the longevity of a company? I suppose just checking to see where the funding's coming from, how many. I think it's difficult. I think it's really, really difficult to get that right. Although there do seem to be some players now that are well established, but a few bad quarters that could still go the other way. But yeah, I suppose what we were intimating there is just making sure it's OCCP 1.6 or 2.0. So any software can connect to it. You had issues with your charger, Kevin. What? But it was 1.6 OCCP. How come you couldn't get into it?
Because it relies on the company that supplied it opening that up. So even though if it's compliant, they still have to let go of it, and they don't necessarily want to let go of it, even though they don't want to support it. And the advice I was given, again, not mentioning any names, was buy a new charger. So, which is when you think that what's the point of building a device that's open if you get that, and there've been some big players in the UK that have pulled out of the UK. I mean, ones I can know of, from when I've done EV rallies, the company Campilio, big company, they're no longer in the UK now, and they've got lots of infrastructure which has been, I think it's been handed over to Valens now to support the back end of it. But so there's, it's that importance of trying to look at track record is going to be key for people utilizing this grant effectively.
But arguably, we've both got AC wallbox chargers, which were big companies and still are big companies, and they're not supported.
So it's like, I think it's a minefield, isn't it?
It is massively. Lewis has just popped in here. Thanks for commenting. On the education front, he's talking about some vans that were plugged into some GridServe 89 pence per kilowatt hour chargers. And he was plugged into some Tesla V4 chargers, which were 50 pence per kilowatt hour. And most people know that Tesla V4 chargers, they can actually charge anything. So I think, it's that education piece. And I think quite a lot of the time, I've been in the industry for just over 3 years. Kevin's been in the industry for quite some time, and Alex too. There is so much to the EV industry and the transition of vehicles from ICE to EV, and actually having not necessarily just one expert, but actually trying to get as much information as possible. I did actually chuck in some information into ChatGPT, and it did actually give some really good advice, I thought, based on my knowledge. So, using AI to make sure that you don't miss anything and make recommendations. I think maybe going to a company that it's difficult. I'm going to ask you this, Kevin. I'm interested in your thoughts, but do you go to a company as a fleet manager, utilities, property manager, and and CEO. And do you go to a company that's will do everything? It's literally end to end transition, or do you speak to a consultant and get the consultant to recommend different parties? What would you recommend there, Kev?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, with a lot of these big companies, they'll have to tender for the work as well. So they'll have to go out to tender to the open market. And then again, and those have timescales as well to fit in with this grant. Because you might have to leave your tender open for a month. Then you've got to assess the tenders. So you think even that's going to start eating into the timescales of these things. And yeah, and I think as well, some companies are concerned because they've been, over the years, they've been throwing so many red herrings. You think of the big push for fleets to go diesel, and then the Dieselgate scandal. So I think, companies have, they have a right to be kind of cautious on these things. And I think that maybe sometimes stops the uptake of these grants, is because people think, oh, we've been burned before, we're not sure. And I think that's the thing. It's all about clear messaging. And as we've talked about in the podcast before, the messaging from certain departments are not necessarily that kind of cohesive and understandable.
We've also got risks of government changes as well, haven't you? I mean, in terms of, if you get a change of party in power, there are some quite vocal politicians at the moment talking about kind of cutting the tail, clipping the wings of the whole net zero transition. It's quite a hard thing if you're investing a large amount of money. You want to get some idea that you're at least semi-future proof, which is tricky. If you kind of if you've got that kind of underlying background concern that, well, all right, fine, I might invest a load of money in this and then find that the market moves a lot slower because the political sands have shifted and suddenly it's not a priority anymore. I mean, there's other technologies that are kind of knocking around as well that can reduce CO2 emissions. I'm going to get absolutely flamed for this because there's people talking about things like biodiesel and things like that. But there's also the CNG and RNG. If you can produce those can help deliver towards steps towards kind of changing your fleet. So it may be at the moment that it's not possible to electrify everything, but you can actually look to adopt different lower carbon technologies which take you a step in the right direction. But yeah, there's a confidence thing which I think is really important, and that possibly is something that non-financial that needs to be shored up, where it needs to be sort of set in stone that this doesn't change with a change of party coming in. It has to be something that's kind of legally binding in a way that kind of promotes that investment, because that's what everyone wants, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a workshop or a tier suppliers, charging in people, putting the charging infrastructure in. You want to be able to know that you've got confidence to kind of set up a business around this, and that requires long-term visibility, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think this has been some of the arguments against this funding is actually because it is so time orientated, there's no kind of long-term planning that you can do. So I think that maybe they could approach that in a slightly different way rather than it just being turn the tap on, everyone's going hell for leather, and then it's off straight away. It's like, oh, I've missed it, or I hadn't done the planning in time. So I think something that's has something a bit more long-term funding, so it can be planned more.
Interesting what Lewis has said in the comments. So Lewis says, Alex is right about political risk. Look at Trump cancelling the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden made. Huge subsidies for battery and EV manufacturing cancelled, and huge plants have been cancelled. Have a stab. What percentage of that investments made so far have gone to Republican voting parts of the USA? The Inflation Reduction, the infrastructure, the inflation. Oh God!
What Lewis said,
Act, isn't it? Yeah, the Biden, the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Sorry, I've just basically the amount of money the amount of federal money that's been committed to this, 80% of that money committed under the Biden administration has gone to Republican speaking areas, and I have just tied my word in knots massively on this. But yeah, it's 80%. So it's gone to set up towards encouraging reduction of EVs and batteries and specialisms in that technology has all gone to Republican states, and then you've now got a Republican government pulling the plug on that. So it's crazy, really. But yeah, there's a huge political risk attached to it.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of, there's risk either way, isn't there? As I talked about the Middle East and, rising fuel costs, I'm sure it's on a lot of fleet operators and business owners' minds now that where diesel prices are going up, actually, maybe we do need to start, that weren't thinking about it before, now starting to think about, okay, actually electrification might be a sensible way. But I think the key is just, like I said, doing that plan and understanding actually, okay, out of my 100 vehicles, and it could be a mixed fleet of vans, cars, trucks, what have you, like which ones, what can I do as a first step to get my toe in the water to say, actually, okay, that number of charging fits in with what power I've got available. They fit with the routes. And actually, from a TCO point of view, actually on paper, based on the planning, based on using the data, actually financially, it's looking good. So those are the type of phases that I would be recommending to people. And if you can take advantage of the funding that's available, great, because I'm sure it will help make the TCO look a lot better. So that's what I would be recommending to people. Just actually have a look to see what can be done right now with current technology that financially does look like a good step, the first step.
And I really think it's probably worth having that generation storage on site to kind of stabilize your costs as well, because energy prices are versatile as well as fuel prices, and that's also worth considering if you're looking at this as a long-term thing, is whether to have some way of kind of grabbing the cheapest or free, if you can generate it yourself, energy on site as well, to kind of avoid energy price shocks, which come along once in a while too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think people are focusing a lot of the time in terms of delays and cost. They're talking about, I can't get the grid connection. Okay, what grid connection can you get? And what, in your budget or with the funding, looking at the TCO and the total cost, what best can you get now that's going to fit in the yard and all these other things, and solar as well to accompany it, then what can be done to help supplement the power? And then I'm going to put the plug in now for Optimo Energy. What operating system can orchestrate it for you? Controlling the grid connection, the energy cost, your solar, your BESS, and then potentially, if there's enough flexibility, take advantage at making sure that your vehicles are charged daily, reliably, before you enter into it, but looking at potentially the flexibility market as well, and making money from that, which again will help the TCO. So I think BESS and PV needs to start being spoken about a bit more as part of the conversation. And this is the thing, this is the complexity. The EV transition isn't just transition your vehicles, it's an energy transition. And that's where it should be looked at a more of a holistic view.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing as well is I've been to lots of meetings when you talk about grid capacity and grid connections, where in quite a few cases, it's cheaper to move your depot, which is a bit mad that it can be cheap because that lottery of grid connections, it's cheaper to move your depot to a location where there's good grid capacity rather than try and do it where you are. I mean, the big thing that I know is, like, if in London, there's a moratorium on, you can't put new data centers because there's not enough power going into London. So, it's things like that. Are you better to look at places outside which have got grid capacity that's just been built?
Yeah, no, it's a good shout. And plus the fact that there's multiple companies, and I'm not going to mention them now, but where they've got charging infrastructure, where they're actually putting the charging infrastructure in, paying an X amount on the kilowatt hour, which tends to be cheaper than public. Maybe moving a depot close to one of those sort of places. But it's not just about depots, though, is it? Because a large amount of these fleets, a lot of these vans go home. And it might be the fact that only a very small percentage of your drivers have got a driveway, and an even smaller percentage actually wants the van on their driveway charging. So there's all these steps just to understand what can be electrified. BBOYV, thanks for commenting. Trying to work out what that picture is. Is that look like a F1 car on a chessboard, but I think my eyes are deceiving me. Will the EV grants include construction, industry, plant vehicles, etc.? I don't think it does, as far as I'm aware. What sort of construction plant vehicles are you talking about? Might be helpful to understand that, but no, I don't think it does.
I mean, that is an area of kind of the industry which doesn't get talked about, which there isn't a huge amount of development in. It's big, heavy plant. I mean, there's hydrogen from JCB. I mean, but they seem to have gone a bit quiet on their electric stuff now because they do their small stuff in electric. But there's, that's a big area where construction could be electrified. I mean, and the one thing that people haven't thought about, if it's a fixed site in a city, is tethered equipment. So actually, do you actually need the battery in it, or do you just tether it if it doesn't go far from the location?
I was working with a Volvo plant dealer. It was from Cambridge, SMT, I think it was, and they needed movable chargers, the Kempower ones, with power as well, because they've actually got quite a few of those type of electric vehicles now, which is interesting. They've got their own BESS as well, Volvo. They've got 2 different types, believe it or not. Again, a lot of their BESS relies on second life batteries, and there's not enough second life batteries to actually produce these other BESS units at the moment. Speak to the boys at ChargeCube. Yeah, I mean, ChargeCube, they've got second life Tesla Model 3 batteries and charging as part of a package in a shipping container. And there are other companies that do that as well. Here we go, tripping. You just put in rapid charges in industrial sites would help firms. The problem is the cost. You've got Mylance as an example. They charge 39 pence per kilowatt hour for eHGVs. But if you did all your charging there, it doesn't work, because really, from a TCO point of view, you need to get the kilowatt hour price down to 25 pence or lower to make it work.
You've also got to tightly control bookings and availability with sites like that. Possibly not at first, but you can't have an HGV turning up and not having a charger, because you completely screw up your entire scheduling with if that's the case.
Well, there are quite a few scheduling systems for electric vehicles now. Bosch, I think, are doing one. There's a couple of other companies out there that do it now, so it has been solved, but it is quite new, it's quite fresh. So they can, I think, from what I understand, they can track your telematics and understand when you're actually going to arrive. So if you are delayed, to make sure that the charge is available for you. I'm not, again, this is what I've heard, but I don't know too much about it. I need to get into a bit more of that detail, but it is quite new on the scene. As BT, so Rick D. Sanchez, thanks for commenting. As a BT engineer, that's an interesting one. BT OpenReach have electrified a load of their fleet, haven't they? The issue is people being scared to talk about wasted energy and wasted taxes. This is why the UK doesn't innovate. Fear that weak chins. Afraid to fix these things. I didn't quite understand that. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of fleets out there that have electrified quite a bit, like BT OpenReach, but I do see a lot of them charging on public infrastructure, which it's not sustainable. It's not, that is not long term. That the price of the electricity out of those chargers, and I'm sure they might get a bit of a deal, but still, if it's sort of 50p plus.
Yeah, the interesting thing with kind of BT as a good example is BT used to have lots of exchanges which would have used a reasonable amount of power back in the analog days of phone systems, which they've got rid of those. You'd think they would have actually thought maybe we could use some of these as charging bases.
I've worked in a converted one. An ex-employer of mine had a converted one of those exchanges.
Yeah, because there's one in Swansea, which was the old exchange, and it's like they can't knock it down because it was radiation hardened, so it's like stupid. It's got a basement that's stupidly shielded and everything like that. But those things, they used to use a lot of power, because you've got to think it was powering everybody's phone back in the day. The fact your phone worked in a power cut because the power was coming from that. Yeah, okay, it's only 50 volts, but you think 50 volts to every single house would have been a lot of stuff. So they should, with more modern technology and fiber, have capacity on their sites to kind of charge these vehicles. But as you say, you do see a lot of them on public charging.
Oh, some kind person, after we spoke about plug-in solar, I don't know if you remember that, guys. We spoke about it last week. Some kind person sent me an email with a couple of videos, and there are plug-in solar. I think it's EcoFactor microgrid, where you can actually get 2 solar panels up to about 800 watt. This micro inverter, and just plug it into a 3-pin plug, and you've got 800 watts straight. Well, as long as the sun's out. And it works out to be about £290 for that setup, which would easily pay for itself in a year, which I thought was fantastic. I'm gonna probably, once I get paid, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I've got somewhere I can put them. But yeah, energy cost is absolutely key here, and I think that the energy costs will probably be going up because of obviously gas price, and standing charges are going up, aren't they, from 1st of April? So even more reason to understand how best could help supplement energy cost and optimize what you currently got with something like Optimo Energy, etc.
Yeah, I've also seen one of those plug-in solars being advertised with an EcoFlow.
That's the EcoFlow. Yeah.
So it's got the panels and a little battery storage unit.
Yeah,
I
think it works out to about £300. I think it's probably going to go up quite a bit. So I'm going to jump on it very, very soon.
Yeah, I think the problem is because I've talked to a lot of people about plug-in solar, and their expectations of it are higher than it can deliver. Having a proper solar array on my house, I know how awful it can be on a really gloomy day. So I think people think it's a magical thing and think they can charge their car off it. I mean, if all of us who drive EVs, you would never tend to charge your car off solar. You might use a little bit of the excess solar if you can do it with a clamp meter instead of exporting it, but your cheapest way to charge your car is always going to be at the moment off peak.
I mean,
and that's the thing. Back to depots, those are things that they need to look at considering, is how you can maximize your energy rate as well. Can you take advantage of off peak? But off peak seems to be a bit harder for businesses to access. Business tariffs seem to be a set rate. Sometimes they're lower overall, but it's just, there needs to be, that's something I wish the grant would work more to, is to enable that kind of model of where you can charge stuff at the most cost-effective times. I mean, because that could help fleets massively. If you could get down as low as, some of the octopus rates at the moment for consumers at 3.4 pence for doing it at the right time, or even charging your battery storage, that's a no-brainer then.
Yeah. So what's that? Is that a question of changing when a vehicle comes into charge? Changing the operation to suit the energy cost. Bear in mind that is going to be dynamic, isn't it? Because the weather will dictate not just the efficiency of the vehicle, but also what's happening in the grid. And there are websites, I'll share it on my socials as well, where it shows you when it's wind, what percentage of wind, what percentage of nuclear, biomass, etc., which will obviously dictate the price of electricity, or does it? Because isn't it attached to gas as well, isn't it? So
there has been talk about them finally decoupling that.
Oh yeah, what were they talking? What were they suggesting there? Because that's connected internationally, so surely we can't do it.
Well, I don't know. For the UK, it's one of the ideas they've come up with. How easy it would be to do, I don't know.
I mean, that would be amazing if we could do that. I don't hold out much hope, because saying that, I mean, we are on renewables quite a lot of the time, but the amount that we turn off the turbines and cost us an arm and a leg, we need to get some more batteries,
or some more stuff to dynamically manage it to get people to use it. Say start charging your fleet stuff now. If it's plugged in, dynamic kind of charging where it can feed back to start using it.
But isn't the issue because it's mainly in Scotland and there isn't actually a cable that goes all the way from Scotland down to the UK?
Yeah, that is one of the.
I believe it's being built, isn't it?
Yeah, that is one of the problems.
Yeah, so I think is this potentially why there is a separate Scottish ZHID, zero emission heavy goods infrastructure demo up in Scotland to encourage fleets to electrify? There's been a lot of grant funding going into Scotland. You'd think that maybe that is the reason, because they've got so much cheaper energy there potentially to take advantage of. That would be a much more suitable place to start electrifying vehicles. It's just, but the sooner we can get that cheap power to where people need it at the right time, the better, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I've just seen another comment about rental vans. Can't get it up on the screen.
Is it
BBOYV?
this one?
Yeah, because there's some news on that. I've seen that Europcar now do rental electric vans. They had a big thing on the advert on it that you can rent an electric van now.
Okay. I just assumed that you would be able to before. They just didn't want to.
Yeah, they've been it's been a lot harder to rent an electric van because I suppose there's a lot more thought needed with it. You can't just necessarily plug it in. And if you're a sole trader renting a van and you haven't got a home charger, you're not going to want to suddenly start public charging everywhere, are you?
No. But saying that, I mean, I spoke to Dimmy because we were putting the Tesla motor back together today, which is good news. I'm going to be putting the video out on Wednesday, and he's got a diesel van. He said he had to go to multiple fuel stations to find diesel because diesel had run out in so many places. So that was interesting to hear. I suppose I'm not going to mention who, but certain people might talk about, oh, you have to wait and plug in your car, and you're waiting ages to charge your car. But if that 5-minute petrol stop or 10-minute petrol stop turns into, hang on a minute, I've got to go to 3 different petrol stations, that does actually extend the time just probably as much as charging, doesn't it? Not that I'm gloating, just saying. So plug-in solar will only generate for 6 months of the year, if at best. Yeah, can disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you, because if I look at my stats from my solar arrays, I've got 4 kilowatt hours, one south-facing stuff, and you're lucky. I get about 120 kilowatt hours in the winter for a whole month.
Wow.
It's actually probably less than that. It's some days you
solar
get
panels though. Are they decent solar panels?
So some are SIGS panels, the early ones, but the new ones, the south-facing ones are for the latest panels because they're not that old. But yeah, so you don't get a huge amount. Sorry, it's 50 kilowatt hours I get. So basically one rapid charge of a car.
Lewis has made a good point talking about the plug-in solar. You limited to one plug for the solar system. You're not limited to that, but that's the recommendation because you could fry your electrics if you do more than one plug.
And I mean, that's my worry with this plug-in solar. Is it a recipe for disaster? Because some people will ignore that and try and plug 3, 4, 5 into their house. I mean, is it going to be then suddenly you'll have all of the general anti people saying, oh, it's causing fires, and it's not. It's just people doing it wrong. So I'm wondering, is there something they put into it to detect that you've got multiple inverters on the system?
I'm not sure.
Because all it is a standard inverter. Because if you think of your home solar, it's plugged. The inverter's technically plugged into the ring. It's just done at the fuse board thing. All you're doing is bringing it a bit closer to your plug. Yeah.
Well, Mod Scotsman's just put in, it's known as balcony solar abroad. They've watched a few videos on it. It's good for a few appliances in a power cut. Shane has just put in, you keep calling it a grant. It's a taxpayer's theft. Yeah, I mean, arguably, it'd be nice if they sorted out the roads first, wouldn't it, before they start putting changing transition vehicles. Honestly, I was driving yesterday. It was dark. I put my fog lights on, and all I was doing, I was looking at the road. I wasn't looking at the traffic. So dangerous at the moment. It needs to be sorted out. And I mean, I don't disagree with you, Shane, in terms of the tax. It's not taxpayer theft, but taxpayer money. Could it be going to other things more important than potential transition?
I mean, it is the first time I was driving on the motorway yesterday, and there's starting to become potholes on motorways, which were generally quite good. And it's like, and you can see they've gone down to it's gone down to the second layer. I mean, and that's on a 70-mile-an-hour road. If you hit that, there's the potential for quite a big accident if they get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, wheels are like 50 pence a piece before not long.
Arguably, is that more of a national emergency right now? Is the state of our roads? I know that my grandfather, who was a road engineer, would be turning in his grave. Honestly, he got upset if like the signs weren't washed, and you couldn't see the signs.
I think as well, it's the way they're fixing them. The way they're patching them is just to, it seems to be these days, to blob a blob of tarmac in it and hope for the best. Well, I mean, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I remember they used to cut the square out and make it and seal it so it didn't come back. But now they just seem to be just like if I was filling up like a hole in my drive with a bit of cement.
Yeah.
It's all crumbling outside my house. Must be to do with the amount of new EVs that are going in and out and making a mess. That these heavy EVs just destroying the road network outside the house.
But to be fair, they've painted that yellow, so it's there now. I'm assuming that's because they're going to fix it, but it seems to be in a yellow hole for quite a few weeks.
Have you seen the video of the chap that he asked the council to sort out potholes? When they don't, he goes and plants flowers.
Yeah.
Although it does look like he's going to be run over at any moment. For a lot of videos that I've seen. Lewis has just put in, I saw a study of properties with ASHP and solar year-round. Even properties in northern Germany managed to power their homes heating 40% of their from their solar panels. I think all houses really could benefit from it, but I just can't warrant spending that much money on a full solar system and battery at the moment. But for the sake of 300 quid, if it's going to make it's just, who knows what's going to happen with energy pricing and all the rest of it.
Get what you pay for a little bit with some of this stuff, don't you? That's the issue. It's all well and good if you're paying 300, but how, what share of the doing it properly are you paying? And what do you get out of it? So,
something to think about for sure.
Yeah, I think it's more that's something you stick on your garage to power like your workshop and stuff rather than a house. I mean, the other thing as well is I saw one of the other things said about in a power cut. Well, unless you have more advanced stuff like islanding, you can't do that in the UK because as soon as the power goes off, you have to cut your supply because you're not allowed to feed it back down just in case it's been cut off because someone's working on the power lines further down. They don't really want to get electrocuted from the opposite direction. So then islanding gets then more expensive. You need more expensive kit to resync the sine waves and all this clever stuff. So,
well, casting rail. Thanks for your comment. But don't put a £300 system. It will piss you off and put you off solar. Yeah, it could well do. To be fair, I just thought it might be quite nice to do, but ultimately I need to have a proper. It'd be better to put some money into a battery, really. Buy a nice BMW i3 battery and get my friend Avidas to fit it. That might be a bit more beneficial. But we're coming away from the EV and depot funding a bit here. But I think just to summarise, really, what we spoke. Go on.
We are and we aren't, because you can get you can install if you do have employees with the ability to plug in at home. You can. It's BIK exempt for doing so. So there are. And then obviously you can then get the home charging grants and other bits. It doesn't work for HGVs, obviously, but if you've got a fleet of van drivers, you can actually, you can as an employer install charging points at their homes to help them get on that, have that infrastructure in place. So there is some advantage in terms of, other things and considerations in terms of solar and so on that can all help, cut down on the cost of running a fleet.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's missing from those grants. I think it should be looked at holistically. So the whole package of not just, it doesn't seem to mention anything about battery storage and solar, and doing it in isolation, again, I think is a mistake. Yeah. It's these like disparate projects that will actually, it's an energy solution you want, not just a depot charging solution. You want something that looks at everything. And depots,
the ideal stuff in the States, you'd get tax breaks on solar and battery storage as well if you were installing this stuff. So you could, it was all separate parts of the same system, but you could get massive tax relief on installing this stuff, including the battery storage, including the solar, including the charging points. It's a holistic thing.
Yeah, it should be more buildings as power stations, because you think lots of depots, like there's an enterprise zone near me. There's lots of depots, buildings, retail. You think you covered every one of those with solar, but the cheapest way to put solar on is on those kind of industrial units anyway. Would you need the grid constraints? Is it better to look at it as an area and do battery storage and everything and just do it in those areas where those things are concentrated? Because it's cheap and quick to do solar on industrial units.
Yeah. And battery, think about the costs. Solar panels are actually not massively expensive, and best battery storage has come right down in price. I remember 2-3 years ago when I was at Vital EV, when I was quoting for battery storage, it was horrendously priced, like 100 grand for most decent size. But now they're coming far under that now for a decent amount of kilowatt hours. So I think you're absolutely right. And, I mentioned it earlier in terms of, looking at the overall energy package rather than just, the EV and the depot.
And I think that's definitely where it's going wrong, is that sort of, again, not joined up thinking. Because are we thinking too much? You say we talk about grid capacity being an issue, but is it because we're reluctant to go to local grids? And this is the thing, is we're thinking of a big grid, but actually is localization, let the communities of businesses actually put stuff in that helps them. But I guess the model then doesn't necessarily work with big energy, does it? If the grid is what kind of generates the revenue, doing it locally, I guess you'd get not spots like you used to get with broadband, where people don't do it. But
this kind of came up a little bit in the Zemo partnership event I went to on Thursday, and Jess, who is sometimes on our channel helping us out, she was doing a spot and getting people to think of ideas, thinking outside the box. Lots of people from the industry in the room, and one of them was to help SMEs. So, we suggested actually having an EV transition consortium of SMEs. So bringing like multiple businesses, local authorities together to understand based on their data. Okay, actually, what does shared charging look like? What does power sharing look like? And let's say there might be a factory. It goes to the shop. Having a charger there, just trying to bring it all together, trying to optimize it that little bit better. Which if you've got multiple businesses, you can share knowledge. You can also share any training, and also because there's more of you, the chances are you'll get a better deal as well on each step of the transition, whether it's the planning, the charging infrastructure, the power, the PV, etc. So power in numbers, as they say. So I thought that would be quite a good idea, but yeah, there just doesn't seem to be as much. Well, I suppose it's just getting it done, really, getting it someone to lead it and someone to encourage it. And I think there's enough people out there now with enough know-how to help people do that now. So yeah,
because you see these token ones, don't you? Like when you drive to Reading, you see the Eco Park because it's got one turbine next to all those massive the Pepsi offices and everything. I think that, but it's just, I mean, why
the electricity one, wasn't it? There used to be a charging point at the base of it.
Yeah, it's why aren't they just thinking more about that? These new enterprise zones when they're being built, is think of the power solution as part of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of these technologies, whether it's EV depots, vehicle to grid, there's all this technology coming at the same time. Maybe we just need to be using some machine learning, AI to help us bring it all together. Because like we keep saying, it is quite complex because there's so many different moving parts to it. And I think maybe industries need to collaborate and local areas just to get it right, because it seems from a national level, it's just not quite working at the moment. Maybe that's what they should do. Maybe they should spread the funding by region a bit more to help the SMEs, which tends to be a large amount of the HGV operators and the van operators as well. It's not just these big, massive DPDs and Royal Mails. There's loads of small, sole traders, etc., that need the help. They need the advice. There's a lot of work to do, but there's all the solutions are there. It's just marrying them all together, isn't it? But yeah, on that, I think we've probably. I'm definitely spent on the subject, and to be honest, I'm feeling rough as you like. So I think I'm going to call it there. But guys, you got anything exciting going on this week?
It's half Easter school holidays this week, so I'm on the start of a bit of work downtime. But I've got an ID3 coming in on test this week, so I've got an ID3 GTX Fire and Ice edition, which as a 90s Volkswagen nerd is quite a cool thing to have. So
I've seen pictures of that. It's got quite unusual paint colours and stuff. So what's special about Fire and Ice then?
It's reviving a Mark II Golf Special Edition that wasn't sold in the UK. It's a proper it's proper nerdy spec, but yeah, it's quite a cool thing. So, and I haven't driven an ID3 post facelift, and I haven't driven a GTX at all. So I'd be interested to see what it's like.
Hopefully, this is more lucky than the last one you had.
Yeah, the last one left on a tow truck. So, but yeah.
Oh dear.
Fingers crossed. I mean, it's not got a high base to start with, but
it might be worth mentioning that actually, because we for a long time I've been talking about ID3s and certain VW group cars with I'm not that confident with the batteries, and my dad's car having issues with its module, and lo and behold, that was the news this week, wasn't it? That there's a call recall for battery modules for ID3s and things like that, right?
I haven't seen that, but
yeah, I'm sure that came out a couple of days ago. Yeah, it might be worth looking at. But cool. All right, guys. Well, I'm not sure whether we're actually going to have one on Sunday or Monday, but I'll speak to the guys. But I would say that we'll probably do one on Monday, not Sunday, chaps. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Next week. Well, we'll double check that, but just keep an eye. So it might not be on the Sunday, it might be on the Monday. But thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.